Hey, it's Scott Weiss with Lessons on Leaving, your complete guide to funerals. Got another message for you today that I want to share with you about the death care industry. Now, to some of you, that might have been the first time you ever heard the term death care industry. But, of course, it is an industry and it is huge. Now, I want to give you a little background on how it all began. Give you some other information, statistics, things you can think about. Actually, around the Civil War time, the Union troops, of course, were fighting. The Southern troops and Union soldiers would end up being killed in battle in the South. At the time, they would just dig a grave, bury them in the South. The parents of the Union troops wanted those young men back home. And so, of course, a 2 or 3, 4 week travel by horse or carriage, wagon, train, whatever, wasn't going to be satisfactory in order to get somebody's body back in decent shape. And so they started embalming. As a matter of fact, the first embalmings, the undertakers out in the field would use arsenic. Not a good recipe because they started dying. Then about that time, formaldehyde was invented or used, and a good arterial embalming where they could put a chemical solution in the arteries of a person, replace the blood, and it would preserve and sanitize the body for a little while so they could at least get home. And that really, from people who drove carriages, people who monitored the cemetery, from carpenters, that's where those kind of 3 fields evolved into mortuaries or undertakers, and now the term is funeral director. Well, that was, like I said, around the Civil War. The National Funeral Directors Association was founded in 1881. That's 134 years ago. So before, say, 150 years ago, there was no funeral industry. There were no professionals that did this. So let's think about this for a second. There's a couple schools of thoughts on how long mankind has been on the earth. I just watched a video last week. It said mankind's been on the earth for 2 million years. Okay? There's another school of thought that says that the earth is relatively young and that man has probably been here around 6,000 years. So regardless of what you believe, that's up to you. But what I want to say, let's just go with the short amount of time for discussion's sake today, that man has only been on the earth for 6,000 years. And the funeral industry has only been around for, say, 134 to 150. So the fact is, for 98% of mankind's history, there has been no funeral industry. There's been no death care industry. How was a person who died taken care of for thousands of years before the Civil War? Well, it was family members. It was family plots, maybe. You might, in 1850, for example, a funeral cost $7. You had $1 to pay somebody to dig the grave. You had $2 for the building of a casket and $4 for food. Now, things have changed quite drastically, obviously, because the death care industry, according to the best research I can find, is a $17 billion industry. 17 billion as in B as in boy. That's bigger than National Football League and Major League Baseball combined. So it's a huge industry, and what we've had, is a commercialization of death. Whereas death used to be a family issue, it has been commercialized. Why am I telling you this? Because I'm telling you, you can decide whether or not you want it to be commercial or personal. There are options now where you can have a home funeral, where you can decide to get involved, where you can do more planning. And obviously, when you do a home funeral, the costs are significantly less. Now, let me tell you something real quick. Never believe or think that the amount of money you spend on a funeral has anything to do with the value or the worth of the person who has passed away. It has absolutely no regard whatsoever in the value of a person's life. Some might lead you to believe otherwise, that if you bought a more expensive casket, or if you had a more elaborate service, or if you had a service that lasted for 4 or 5 days and was elongated, it would really show your appreciation for this person. Complete nonsense. If the value of a person's life was measured by how much we spent on the funeral, all of us would be in debt for the rest of our lives burying our loved ones. We would spend everything we could possibly spend. It's no relation whatsoever. So just know that's cost-saving ways by taking matters into your own hands, by doing things more yourself. And we'll talk about that in the future as we get to cover things. Just a little short history on the death care industry, the background, how it all began, where embalming began. Just to remind you, the United States and Canada are the only two nations in the world that regularly embalm. So that's kind of an unusual thing to many people from outside this nation. So remember, Scott Weiss, Lessons on Leaving. Oh, one other thing I want to say. Funerals are going to be planned. 70% of funeral planning right now is by a female who is a baby boomer age or older. So we're talking about somewhere in the 50 to 55 years old. A lady that age and older is going to plan 70% of funerals. And the funeral industry, the death care industry, knows this, and the marketing and the advertising is targeted directly to that sect or demographic. And so if you have if your mom or your aunt, your grandmother, your sister, if it's you that I'm talking to, you've got to subscribe to this website. You've got to get this information I'm going to give you so that you are armed, so that you're knowledgeable, so that you can make proper decisions ahead of time. Like I said, many of you probably never heard the term death care industry. The terms that I'm going to use and introduce you to, you're going to be able to make proper decisions and be more in control. So let's prepare ourselves. So again, Scott Weiss here with Lessons on Leaving, your complete guide to funerals. Please go subscribe to my website. If you're watching this on Facebook or YouTube, give me a thumbs up, a thumbs down. Please give me some feedback. Let me know if you like the videos. Let me know if there's a subject you want me to cover. Give me a comment. Tell me about a funeral that you've had in the past, whether it was good, whether it was bad. Give me some feedback, and let's just start this discussion about death so that we can be prepared better.